All right, so we talked earlier about different types of mediations. If we were going to do the role plays, which unfortunately we don't get to do, we would be using this thing. We would be doing a facilitative mediation. If you decide to try to help out friends or help someone else out with a mediation, which I'm going to give you steps here that will help you do this. If you're going to do that, you would probably use a facilitative model. So everybody I've ever dealt with and everything I've looked at has some form of step model. Some of it's a 3-step, 4-step, 6-step, 8-step, whatever. But they all have some form of steps. All right, so I've been volunteering with the Knoxville Community Mediation Center for about 6 years now. They use a 6-step model, and I'm going to utilize theirs because we've found over the last 20-something years that they've been in business that this has become a very useful model for novice mediators, people who've never mediated before, as well as veteran mediators that have done it for decades. And it also works really well for clients, especially those pro se, those unrepresented by attorneys that need to have some kind of structure to follow along so they can see that they're actually moving. So let's move ahead. So this is a 6-step model based out of the Community Mediation Center. The first step is introducing the mediation process. First off, you have to explain what mediation is. If you're doing this on the fly and you've got two friends and you're just like, I'm going to step in and mediate this, and you're going to have to explain to them what it is. It's that stuff that we just talked about in that previous thing. You're going to go over the ground rules. No kicking, no biting, no punching below the belt, those kind of things. Okay, so not that, but specifically we're going to discuss, being respectful to each other, letting each other talk without interruption, those kind of things. We're going to talk about confidentiality. All mediations are confidential. Whether you're a Rule 31 listed mediator, which I am, or you're working for a mediation center, or you're doing it privately, unless you explicitly say otherwise, mediations are considered confidential. What happens in mediation stays in mediation. It's that for a purpose. The reason why you do mediation and confidentiality is that if you have two people that have a pending court date, or they may want to sue, or they may want to do these things, they're not going to open up to you and tell you ideas and things because they're afraid that somebody's going to try to use it against them in court. So that's why you must discuss that it is confidential. You're going to go over the 6 steps, which we're going to walk through. The first one you're right now, you're going to literally go. We're going to do a 6-step model. Step 1, what we're doing now is this. This is the idea of that model. And then you're going to read an agreement to mediate. If you were in the mediation center or if you were doing this in the class, I've got one made for you. If you decide you want to try to mediate and you need some help with this, reach out to me. My number is always available to you. Just Google Tim Howell Surveyor. You'll find my cell phone number. You'll be good to go. But sign and read the agreement to mediate. All right. Congratulations. You just made your first agreement. Now we're moving on to step 2. Okay, so step 2 is presentation of viewpoints. Here you're going to hear everybody's issues of what they're doing and what's going on. You can either do this in a group session with everybody in the room, or you can take separate sessions and have one party talk to you, and then when they leave, have the other party come in and talk to you, and then when they leave, you and your mediator sit there and talk it out. By the way, in our mediation, what we would do in CMC, what we would have done in class, what I would try to do in private practice is use a co-mediator model. That is 2 mediators that works tandemly to help resolve this. It is not a matter of one person being in charge, the other one being subservient. It is co. You are equal. Whether one is advanced and one is a novice, you're still co-mediators, you're equal. It helps model good behavior. It helps do all these things in front of these people. All right. So moving on, let's look at this idea. By the way, co-mediation might actually be in the quiz. So moving on, the first thing you're going to do is ask open-ended questions. And then you're also going to allow the parties to speak uninterrupted. This is what I want to point out. I had a mediator, an older mediator tell me one time, and I think it was, and he's a journalist and all that, and he said, best thing you can do is ask a question and shut up and let them talk. Don't take a lot of notes. Don't scribble a bunch of things down. Don't interview them. Don't berate them with a bunch of questions. Just open up the question and then shut up and let them talk. They will eventually get to everything. At the end, if they haven't covered everything you need to, then you can ask some questions. Now, that being said, using those listening skills that you have, you're going to do some paraphrasing, you're going to do some reframing, you're going to do a few things like that. I like to open up with a simple question like, what brought us here today and what you'd like to see get out of it? That tends to give them a broad spectrum of what we're looking for. We need some background, lets them vent, lets them start talking. We're going to use all those skills that you guys have already learned in class, and you're going to pay attention to this, and you're going to listen, and they're going to vent, and you're going to use this empathic listening. You're going to pay attention and you're going to take a few notes if need be. You're going to ask very few questions as you have to. But when you're done, when they are done, you're going to summarize them. You may have paraphrased along the way. You may have done some of the reframing and restating and those kind of things and some mirroring and that. But at this point, you're going to summarize. You're going to say, okay, so let me get this straight. This is what you're looking for, A, B, C, D. We got it good? Cool. Next, and you go on to the next person. All right. So once you've talked to both people, once you've heard both people, as the mediators, you are going to come up with a task statement. You're going to try to encapsulate the key issues to figure out exactly what it is that they're looking for. Then you're going to write a neutral, non-biased statement. Now, let me clarify this, what I mean by this. A neutral, non-biased statement. Let's say we're doing a co-parenting plan. It's a never married parent situation. Mom has all the rights. Mom has the kid. Dad's looking to get some visitation, probably going to be every other weekend, standard visitation order. When we're doing this thing, we're not going to say we are looking for a way to get dad visitation time. That is not neutral, non-biased. That is all about trying to get dad something. That's not what you do. You're going to write a neutral, non-biased statement, which is going to say, today we're going to try to find a means in which little Johnny can have quality time with both parents. So now we're focusing it on the kid and making sure that the child gets quality time with both parents, not just one or the other. All right. Once you and your co-mediator have come up with this task statement, you want to get the parties' buy-ins. You're going to go over it with them. If you need to, you're going to write it up on the whiteboard, but you're going to make sure that everybody knows exactly what it is that we're talking about. Does that make sense? You want to make sure that everybody is fully aware. And everybody knows, because what happens is when you write this statement, maybe we miss something. Maybe we say, we're here for back rent and possession, and the landlord says, and cleaning up the yard. Okay, so let's get this together. Everybody good? We know what we're working on? Cool. This helps us focus the mediation and keeps people on task when they start getting a little too off topic. Step 4, brainstorming. This is literally the hardest step you're going to find. And here's why. Remember in empathic listening, we said don't give ideas, don't lead them in, because let me explain what happens. If I give you an idea as the mediator, even though I have no authoritative power, remember we talked about that originally. If I give you an idea, people latch onto that as being the right idea. So you can't give ideas. You can't give suggestions. You can't do any of that. You are simply there to try to get people to come up with ideas and brainstorm and come up with solutions. The problem is most people can't think past that one idea that they got that they think that they need to have. So brainstorming is really difficult and it's really hard. Sometimes you do got to throw out ideas. And when I do so extreme that there's no way anybody would latch on to it. And or you give a range from 0 to 1,000 so that if you say like that, for example, when we're brainstorming in never married parent or parenting plans, and we start talking about vacation, and people say, well, they're young, they've got a 6-month-old, these people are working 52 weeks a year, they don't even understand the concept of vacation anymore, there's no such thing as one, and they think, okay, vacation. And you're like, okay, so what length of time do you want to be able to have your child separately to override everything else? Are we talking a day, a week, a month, 6 months, a year? What kind of time frame would you like to think of that? I gave them from 1 day all the way up to an entire year. So the entire spectrum is there. I didn't latch on to anything specifically. But it is something we have to talk about, so let's bring it up and let's discuss it. So sometimes brainstorming can work. Write the things up on the board. When you write everything on the board, everything gets put all together in one big group. If you don't put it in a group, you end up with that thing called reactive devaluation. We talked about that earlier in listening. Reactive devaluation is the idea of devaluating something simply because it was what the other party said. So put everything together in one big group. I mean, you can lump vacation time with one and holidays over here and daily schedule or money and returning the items and whatever into their corrective things. But as far as who said what, goes all together in one thing. You want to prevent evaluating. That is the fastest way to end brainstorming, is for someone to evaluate. If I go up and say, oh yeah, I want to do X, and as soon as we do X, somebody goes, well, you know, that's just stupid, or that'll never work, or whatever. All of a sudden, I quit wanting to throw out ideas. Now, one story I like to use a lot of times when I talk about brainstorming, when I'm trying to get people ideas, and I talk about the evaluating, I talk about that. It says, and I talk about no self-censoring. And it's the idea that there's no stupid ideas. Okay, there are stupid ideas, but stupid ideas can actually lead to good ideas. There's a urban myth about the idea of, you know, the Ferrero Rocher, which is that hazelnut wrapped up in, or mixed in like truffle chocolate, then encased in a cookie shell, then enrobed in more chocolate, and then rolled in crumbs, or hazelnut crumbs, wrapped in a gold foil in a little cup. You know the one. All right. So they were having a problem, apparently, cracking a hazelnut. If you've never seen a hazelnut, it's perfect. It's round nut, does not have a seam like a peanut or a walnut does. And when they were trying to crack them, they were smashing and breaking the nut inside, and they needed a whole nut. So they had a big community brainstorming area, or, you know, the whole factory-wide brainstorming, and everybody's throwing out things. And finally, somebody from accounting or wherever says, you know what would be cool is if we could just pop a little bitty fairy in there, and they could just take a hammer and tip, 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 and break the shell from the inside. Then we don't crack the nut. Someone from an engineering goes, you know what we could do is we could just drill a hole into the shell and blast air in and pop it from the inside. So, and that was the one. So as you see, even though the fairy was far-fetched, it stemmed the idea of somebody else to come up with a better idea. Also, the other thing about self-censoring is you never know what is really a bad idea, because at some point, sometime, somewhere, somebody in a meeting said, you know what we should do? We should make a movie about a tornado full of sharks. And now there are 6 of them. So, brainstorming, getting people to say what they need to say, running through them, get that out there, don't self-censor, don't evaluate. And as a neutral, again, you don't get to help. All right, once you've gone through the brainstorming, once you've got a whole bunch of stuff up there, maybe not everything, maybe not all the stuff, but enough stuff, you can move on to step 5. And now you're going to help the parties review their options. You're going to look at their situation and try to figure out ways to help them. You're going to use perception checking and make sure that what this person is saying and what this person is hearing is the same thing, that everybody's on the same page. You're going to do reality checks. You're going to make sure that what they said was going to happen can actually be done. For example, in a co-parenting plan, they said, well, I want 50% and I want 50%, and you're going to stay half time at my house, half time at your house. Problem is, kid goes to school in Knox County, dude lives in Chattanooga. How's he going to get the kid to school every week, every other week? So you're doing reality checks. You're also going to look for holes and ambiguity. You're going to pull strings. You're going to do that, but you got to be careful. Some strings you can pull, some things you've got to let lie. You need to check for things that are wrong. If you're looking at something and you can see an obvious flaw that's going to cause a problem or could potentially cause a problem, tactfully ask how they're going to deal with this if this comes up. Those are the kind of things we look at. Are we seeing things that can easily be confused? Clarify with them. Make sure that it is. Remember, this is their agreement, their solution. So you're trying to come up with that stuff. All right. And the last step is concluding the mediation. Once you've got it done, let's say you got to the end, you're going to finalize and so review the thing and do the final decision. Remember, as a mediator, you are not an attorney. You cannot just write up whatever you want to. You have to write up. It has to be done in a way that is not practicing law without a license. You can help them write their own as long as they're writing it, because they can write their own. They do not require an attorney to write their own agreement. But a third party writing must be an attorney. Now, so you can help them do that, review it. Sometimes you're going to do what's called a memorandum of understanding, and they're going to take it to an attorney and let them write it up. Make sure that everything that you're writing down, everything that they're writing down, whatever, everybody's bought in and everybody agrees to it, and then we're going to memorialize it, like I said. Now, if for some reason you don't come to a resolution and you need to end it, you got to look at the safe ways to do it. How do we end it? So if you have something that looks like it's definitely going to end up with someone getting their butt kicked when they go out into the parking lot, let the potential victim go first. Hold the abuser back and wait. Give that person time to get in their car and leave before you let the other one. Find some reason to ask them. Ask them about their job. Ask them about something that came up in mediation that you think would be interesting to drag them into for a minute. I had a situation where I was a little concerned about it. David was a cable guy. So when I let them out, I said, hey, guy, let me ask you a question. How do I need to contact if I'm trying to get cable to my house? I've got, I went into some elaborate stuff to give the woman about 10 to 15 minutes to get to their car to leave before I let the dude leave. So remember with that, and no matter what you do, review what happens next. Make sure everybody knows what they have to do, whether you've got to go to court, whether you're good, whether you're going to have an attorney write something up, whatever it is, make sure everybody's on the same page before you let everybody go.